Medicine interviews are right around the corner. In this video, I'll talk about how best to prepare for panel interviews and my experience with them. If you're new here, I'm Hassan. I'm a third year medical student at UCL and I'm currently taking a somewhat gap year. If I had my interview coming soon, the first thing I would do is research panel interviews for my specific university and see if I can glean any university specific advice. So for example, for this, I'd search on the student room to see what past students have said about their interview at that uni. Next, I'd prepare myself to cover as many questions as I can. To do this, I'd make a list of questions that are commonly asked. So for example, what's your greatest weakness? Why do you want to come to this medical school? What makes you a great candidate? What's your greatest strength? And talk about a time where you showed leadership skills or teamwork skills, and the list goes on. For each question, I'd come up with a semi-answer drawing on your past experiences. The reason I recommend this is so in the interview, if you're asked any of these questions, you don't have to try and think of experiences whilst you're super nervous. You'll have already thought of them ahead of time. I wouldn't script out full answers, but instead I'd just write about the experience and write a few bullet points, and this way you'll be a lot more natural in the interview as you have scripted a full answer. The greatest teacher when it comes to interviews is practice. As you do more interview prep with other people, this will help calm your nerves, and also different questions will prop up, so you can also add these to your list and write some notes for them, and this will allow you to cover your ground as much as possible and to make your list of questions as comprehensive as possible. Your next source of questions will come from your personal statement. Oftentimes they'll have a copy with them and will ask you questions based on what you've said within it, so I'd definitely go through it with a friend or two and I'd come up with as many questions as you can. So for example, they may ask you about an experience that you had or a report that you wrote or a book that you read, and then bullet point some notes for each of these questions. This is where it's important that if you read the book and it was quite a while ago and your interview is approaching, I'd definitely take a skim through and try and make a few notes on the book, so if you are asked about it, you have a few points to mention and they can be pretty solid developed points. As long as you bullet point them beforehand, you can develop further in the actual interview. If you apply to a university that accepts the BMAT, then it is definitely possible they may go through your BMAT essay with you and ask you questions based off that. Perhaps they may ask you about a point that you made and whether you can expand on it, or whether you look back and you think differently about the topic. But either way, just be prepared that you may be asked about your BMAT essay. Definitely take a look at the student room for this, see what other people posted, their BMAT answers, and that may give you a sort of idea on different perspectives, different point of views. You can use this for your interview. When they ask you questions about your BMAT essay, you can draw on what other people have said. One thing to remember though is the interviewers aren't there to trip you up. For example, in two of my interviews, Manchester and UCL, I was asked a question and I didn't know what they were asking me. So I then asked for an explanation, and then I gave my answer. The sort of scenario is they asked me about the ethics between passive and active euthanasia, and I didn't know the definitions of either, so I just asked them, they explained the definitions, and I then spoke about what I thought the ethics were for both active and passive euthanasia. They're not assessing you on how much medicine you know right now, rather how you can think about certain topics and whether you can be critical and show both the positive and negative sides. Now from my experience, my panel interview was at UCL Medical School and it was an absolutely crazy experience. In 15 minutes the interview was over, and this is crazy because all my other 3 interviews were MMI interviews and they each took over an hour. So to think that my future and the decision of me getting into medical school is decided within 15 minutes was an absolutely crazy thought. I was called into the interview and there were 3 panelists waiting for me. I remember feeling super nervous during the interview, but I tried to reassure myself by thinking that at this stage the chances of getting in are so high relative to when I started my application. At the point of interview, usually at least 1 in 2 people get an offer post interview. If you got this far, thank you for watching. Good luck for your panel interviews. I hope you found the video helpful and I'll see you guys next time.